Okay, so this camera flip video is about the Reading Women Reading Challenge for 2021. And what I do every year is those reading challenges that interest me, instead of looking at them at the beginning of the year, I wait until December, and then I have a look through the different prompts and think back to what I read in 2021 and see how well I did. And sometimes if there's nothing for a prompt, then I'm tempted to see what I can find. So this year I had something for all but one of the categories, and because I have a concussion, I'm not reading very much right now, just a few pages at a time actually, but I can talk. And I also have a broken wrist, and so I have my dear friend Lori is reading the prompts for me, so I don't have to do much reading. And that's about all you need to know. So here goes.
First prompt, a book longlisted for the JCB Prize.
So this is a prize awarded in India. And when I first looked at this prompt, I went to the JCB website and looked at all their long-listed books for, the most recent ones. And none of them were easily available to me. But my friend Jenny from Reading Envy, she pointed out, she said, you've probably read some from past years, of course. And one of those was a winner from a few years ago called The Far Field, Madhuri Vijay. And that one sticks in my mind because I listened to that one in audio, and it was at the 8-hour mark that I gave up on it. I bailed. So I did not finish that one. But this year I did read in January Latitudes of Longing by Shubhangi Swarup. I think, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure Sean has a list of all these titles so you can look down below and get the correct spelling and all that, because I don't have physical copies of all of these. I read a lot of library books because I read about a book a day, so I do rely on the library a lot. What's number 2?
An author from Eastern Europe.
So for this category, I've got 2 that are tied, and both of these books I did buddy reads. I did them as buddy reads with my friend Kathy. And so one is In Memory of Memory by Maria Stepanova, and that one, nobody knows how to describe what category of book it is, because it's fiction, it's memoir, it's 20th century history, it's essays about art, and it is absolutely wonderful. And then the other one is Voices from Chernobyl, and that one is by the Nobel journalist, Nobel-winning author Svetlana Alexievich, and polyphonic. She interviewed all these people who were affected by the 1986 Chernobyl disaster, and I highly, highly recommend that one too.
A book about incarceration.
All right, 1 for this, and it's a great one, The Strangers by Katherena Vermette. She wrote The Break last year or the year before, and one of the characters from The Break is in this one, and she's in prison in this one. So the story is told from multiple viewpoints, and there are 3 generations from one Métis family in Winnipeg.
A cookbook by a woman of color.
So for this, I've chosen, there were several to choose from, but the one I picked was Our Little Kitchen by Jillian Tamaki. And it's a picture book, actually good for all ages, and it's based on the author and artist's experience working in a community kitchen in Brooklyn. And there are a couple of recipes in the book as well, but it's also a sort of a story about what one day is like, getting food prepared and feeding people from the community.
A protagonist older than 50.
I like reading books about old ladies. So one of my favorites this year is Shadow Life, and it's by Hiromi Goto, and the artist is Ann Xu. So you have to see what it looks like inside. Oh, there's the vacuum cleaner. You can see the vacuum cleaner on the front. This is an important tool if you happen to have demons in your house. So anyway, the story is about a woman whose daughters were concerned about her not being able to live at home anymore. They've put her in a seniors facility, and she does not like it there. She busts out and goes to live on her own. Her daughters don't know where she is. It's absolutely wonderful. Yes. And this old woman is also bisexual. And so in addition to getting a great Asian character, it's even a bisexual woman. So I loved that. And then another novel that I really liked this year, I wish had got more attention. It's by Joe Owens, and it's called A Funny Kind of Paradise. And that one is set in a care facility, a seniors care facility. And Francesca, the main character, has had a stroke, and she's aphasic. So the points of view from her, it's inside her head, but she's also listening to conversations around her. So the staff and the other patients who live in that facility. And I recommend that one too.
South American author in translation.
So the one that sticks out most for me is The Adventures of China Iran, and that one is this wild Argentinian adventure, historical fiction. And the translators are Fiona McIntosh and Iona McIntyre. And you've probably, Sean, I know that you tried reading this. I don't know if you finished it. I liked it a lot better than you did.
I'm curious about this one because I know you don't typically reread books, but name a reread of a favorite.
Yeah, so that's true. I often don't reread books. This year, my Lesbian Plus book club chose books that I had read in 2020. So I think there were 4 rereads for me. So including Nopaming. I could read this every year. Leanne Betasamosake Simpson. I also reread Polar Vortex by Shani Mutu, and The Subtweet by Vivek Shreya. Oh, yeah, great books.
Memoir by an Indigenous, First Nations, Native, or Aboriginal woman.
So I know I've read at least 2. One of them is How to Lose Everything by Krista Couture. And the other was In My Own Moccasins by Helen Knott.
A neurodivergent author.
So 2 standouts for me. Exciting Times by Nisha Dolan. And with that book, it was the voice, just so unique and witty. It's about a love triangle, and normally any kind of romance stuff is not my bag. But that voice just got me. I really cared about her. Ava, she was an English teacher in Hong Kong in her early 20s. And then the other neurodivergent author that really sticks out for me, it was a memoir in comics format. I read it in French language. She's from France, Julie Dachez. And her book is called La Différence Invisible. And I'll have to check to see if it's translated to English. I actually don't know.
Crime novel or thriller in translation?
Okay, Sean, you sent me this one, Snakes and Earrings. So that's by Hiromi Kanahara, and it's translated by, who is it translated by? David James Karashima. So it starts out with a young woman in a bar meets this guy who's got a forked tongue, and she's so fascinated, and she wants to get a forked tongue, and she follows him home, and there's all kinds of body stuff, tattoos and piercings, and crime. And I found it quite gripping and dark, very, very dark. And then another standout is The Godmother by Hannelore Kerr, who's a French author. And yeah, that one was another dark but funny sort of crime book.
A book about the natural world.
I read books about the natural world all the time, so I didn't even count up how many of them. Fathoms by Rebecca Giggs. What else? Finding the Mother Tree. What Willow Says by Lynn Buckle. You know, that's just a few. One of my favorites, Field Study by Helen Humphreys. Now, this would be a great gift book if you know anybody who's into the natural world. This is about a year that Helen spent looking through the plants at a herbarium. And, you know, one of the reasons why it's a great gift book is that it is just chock full of illustrations. So there's photographs, there's drawings, and she researches the naturalists who collected specimens for this particular herbarium. And so there's little stories about them. She talks about how during the pandemic, what gave her comfort was walking in nature. And yet she was also aware that people are destroying the planet. So, you know, it's that push-pull, and how can we exist, because we are part of nature, and we just, yeah. It's absolutely wonderful. Oh, another nature book I really like, Jenna Butler's Reverie, about beekeeping, and James Rebank, English Pastoral. So, oh, so many. I could do a whole camera foot. Tell me if you want me to just talk about nature books, because I could do that.
A young adult novel by a Latinx author.
Okay, so I've read several, but the one I'm going to tell you about is Cemetery Boys. It's by Aidan Thomas, and the remarkable thing about this, there's many great things about it, but it is the protagonist, the central protagonist is Latinx trans man. The author is a Latinx trans man. And I listened to the audiobook, and it is read by Avi Rock, who is also Latinx trans man. So, very cool. Yeah. And there's brujo magic in it, lots of family dynamics that I found interesting. It is a romance, and some of that stuff was just over the top for me, but there was enough for me to enjoy in it that I could live with the romance aspects.
Poetry collection by a black woman.
So this was another one that I read twice because my Lesbian Plus book club did it. Burning Sugar by Cicely Bell Blaine. And so her poetry is so fierce and so tender. She writes about art and geography and childhood. Yeah, burning hot stuff.
A book with a biracial protagonist.
Okay, lots came to mind. The Actual Star by Monica Byrne. And that one it's 3 timelines, each 1,000 years apart. So it starts in the year 1012, and it's the Mayan people in what is now Belize. And then in 2012, and there's a Mayan white biracial character who lives in the States. And then in 3012, what happens to people in the world after climate disaster, and there's just one worldwide population of nomads. And it was just astonishing. In Ruth Ozeki's latest novel, it's called The Book of Form and Emptiness. The central character there is a young man who is, his father was Japanese and his mom was, I think, Scandinavian, but it's set in North America. It's not said which city, but it's somewhere on the West Coast. So I do have another one with a biracial author, M, by Kim Thuy. And this one is totally kaleidoscopic too. You go from one viewpoint to another, to another, to another in very short chapters, or almost vignettes. The writing style is just so pure and clear, and you can always tell where you are, who you're with. It's not confusing at all. But the central thread, there's a baby that's born with a Vietnamese mother and an American soldier father. So, yeah, I'm going to show you again. M by Kim Thuy.
A Muslim middle grade novel.
I only had one for this one. I did get one. The author is Hannah Alkaf, A-L-K-A-F, and it's called Girl and the Ghost, or The Girl and the Ghost. So, yeah, set in Malaysia, spooky story about a girl whose best friend is actually a hereditary demon. He's with her all the time.
A queer love story.
Okay, so I already mentioned love stories aren't my thing. But I did quite enjoy the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. That's a graphic novel series, and I read 3 volumes of it. But it's about gay boys in school. And I want to tell you about an Own Voices kind of book, and that is by Emily Danforth. It is called, what's it called? Plain Bad Heroines. We've got alternating timelines. So one is set New England WASP. I can't remember how far back in time it is, but they wore corsets and wasp waists, right? And then there's the contemporary Hollywood buzz sort of story. And there are yellow jackets. So many yellow jackets. So if you're afraid of being stung, be careful of this book. It's complex. It took me quite a long time to get into it, but once I did, I was all in.
A book about a woman in politics.
So surprisingly, I've read 3 this year. I say surprisingly because I'm actually not that interested in politics, but I did read Jody Wilson-Raybould's Indian in the Cabinet and Selena Cesar Chavan's Can You Hear Me Now? And both of those women were MPs in Justin Trudeau's first government. Yeah. But I'm going to mention another one that I only just recently finished. It's actually a novel, but it is about a woman in politics, and it's everybody's probably heard that Hillary Clinton and Louise Penny wrote a book together, and it's called State of Terror. Great big fat book. And I was dubious about it, but I saw it on the Hits to Go at the library, a 1-week-long book. I thought I'll just read a chapter and see what it's like. And I was kind of so-so on it. But I read the second chapter, and then I couldn't stop. I think I read 200 pages the first day and finished the book the second day. So if you want something that really grabs you, that's got strong women in it, and that's really fun, I recommend it.
A book with a rural setting.
Okay, I got several. There's The Yield by Tara June Winch, and Astra by Cedar Bowers. Now that one was on the Giller long list, and it's a story of one woman's life from birth into her senior years, and she grew up on a commune way in the boonies in British Columbia.
A book with a cover designed by a woman.
So I just had to check to see if the book that I was reading had a cover designed by a woman. Can you see that? It's quite subtle with a wing and little bits of light. Everything Affects Everyone. It's by Shauna LeMay. And in a way, it's a novel about angels, but it's about more than that too. I'm still processing it, actually. The pages are of this sort of pale cream, and there are a few photographs in it of paintings that are reproduced. So the design is beautiful, and the whole book, including the cover, was designed by, what is her name? Ellie Hastings. I did look her up, and she's from Windsor. She's been designing for at least 5 years, but designing books for at least 5 years, and she plays the bagpipes. That's all I know about her. And I have this lovely angel bookmark that the author drew, and I got it when I got her book signed.
A book by an Arab author in translation.
This is the category that I didn't have one, so I have moved up on my TBR to read Woman at Point Zero by Nawal Saadawi.
A book by a trans author.
I think you already know about Detransition Baby by Tori Peters, which I read earlier this year, but I also read this wonderful A Dream of a Woman by Casey Plett. So it's a collection of short stories plus one novella, and the novella is actually split into 5 parts that are almost chapters in between the other stories, and it works really well, and it's fabulous.
A fantasy novel by an Asian author.
So I read 2 by Premi Mohammed this year. This one is actually more, I would call it science fiction, but hers, what is it called? Beneath the Rising. I already gave it to one of my sisters to read, so I can't show you that cover. Starts out in Edmonton, and then there's, there are some ancient bastards that have to be stopped. That's what the fantasy is about.
A nonfiction book about social justice.
Okay, I counted at least 11 that I read this year, so it was really hard to pick one. I'm going to go with My Conversations with Canadians by Lee Maracle. Sorry about that. That's Frida the cat. She's on our minds because she just died at the end of November. And My Conversations with Canadians is quite provocative. I would say that one of the aspects of it that really got me thinking was talking about marginalization, where she says, it depends on your viewpoint. Who's at the center? That's, your viewpoint changes who's marginalized, right? But she is also, she's a great orator. I listened to it in audio. She's not the person who did the reading of it, but it was, someone did a great job. I would have to say one of the things about Lee Maracle is she does not let the facts stand in the way of a good story. So sometimes I found it was like with a grain of salt as I was listening to her do her stories, but I still recommend that.
A short story collection by a Caribbean author.
I found one in my Goodreads, and that is These Ghosts Are Family by Maisie Card. And it's actually interconnected short stories from, it's 8 generations of one family in Jamaica. Do we have time for the bonus? I think we're not at 30 minutes yet, so let's go.
Okay, starting off the bonus round with a book by Alexis Wright.
Yeah, so quite a long time ago I read Carpinteria, and I really liked it, and so I had the Swan book on my shelf to read, and I just started it a couple of weeks ago. You can see I'm already flagging lots of comments because I'm loving it. Yeah.
Book by Tsitsi Dangaremga.
Tsitsi Dangaremba, I tried This Mournable Body last year and I bailed on it. And I haven't felt like picking up anything else by her yet. Who else?
Book by Leila Abulela.
Leila Abulela. Yes, I have not read anything by her. I have already marked, when I went back to see on Goodreads, that I want to read The Minaret. And there's also a collection of short stories called Elsewhere Home that I'd like to try.
And the final one is a book by Yoko Ogawa.
And I've read 3 books by Yoko Ogawa in the past, a collection of her short stories called Revenge. I read The Memory Police, and I read Housekeeper and the Professor. But nothing in this past year. I think, I'm not feeling like I need to rush out and find something else to read by her. But I'm not against it because I've enjoyed all 3. And so there you have it. That's my Reading Women challenge. So thank you to the people of the Reading Women podcast for putting this challenge together. It was fun. And I hope you enjoyed watching this podcast or this camera flip. And I also want to mention that I did just today I created an account. So those of you kind people who put comments on Sean's channel, now I'll be able to answer them. Yay! Bye.